Good afternoon, everyone. That is true. Good afternoon. At this time, I'd like to call to order the December 21st, 2023 regular meeting of the North County Transit District Board of Directors. As this is the final board meeting of 2023, I'd like to take a moment to thank staff and my board colleagues for your hard work and many contributions this past year. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. I will now ask Suhel Rodriguez, our amazing clerk of the board, to call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Member Robinson. Board Member Hinsey. Here. Board Member Contreras.
Present.
Board Member Garcia.
Here.
Board Member Desmond.
Here.
Board Alternate Gasterland.
Here.
Ms. Gasterland, would you like to make a statement regarding your remote participation?
Oh dear, I would, and I didn't print it out to put it in front of me.
I'll go ahead and make that for you if you.
Great, excellent, thank you.
Ms. Gasterland is here under remote participation under the provision of Assembly Bill 2449 for Just Cause. Are there any adults with you in the room?
No, they're not.
Thank you. Board Chair Edson.
Present.
Board Member Jenkins.
Here.
Vice Chair Patel. Here. This completes the roll.
Thank you. Board Member Lee, welcome. Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, for the record, Mr. Kent Lee is present. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Suhel, please provide a safety brief and review evacuation procedures.
Certainly. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of this building. There's also a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, ma'am. Suhel, are there any changes to today's agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
And do we have any public comments today?
There was a telephonic public comment that was received regarding presentation item number 2, and that was sent to the board prior to the start of the meeting. We do have a public speaker who is now on Zoom, Melanie Cohn. Also, oh, no, not public. I'm sorry, not public communication.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Next, when the time comes for questions or comments, please raise your hand or catch my eye and wait to be called upon. And finally, please turn on and speak into your microphone to ensure that your comments are also heard by those attending remotely. Thanks. We have 3 presentations on today's agenda. They're all informational and will not require a vote. Our first presentation will recognize 2 hardworking NCTD employees who have reached their 30-year anniversary with the district. That's quite an accomplishment. Karen Tucholsky, our Chief Operations Officer, Operations Support Services, is here to present. Karen, we're all ears.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board members. Each year we have this opportunity to recognize some of our very special and dedicated employees, and I continue to be honored to have the privilege of doing that. So this year, we have two exceptional individuals that we want to recognize who have dedicated, as Chair Edson noted, over 30 years of service to NCTD and our customers. Mr. Lelancy Mims, who started with us as a bus operator, he's moved up since then into safety and training, and he is now a classroom instructor, helping bring new bus operators into the fold of NCTD. Secondly, we have Mr. Orlando Andrews, who has also dedicated 30+ years of service to us. He started as a bus operator and he has remained as a bus operator during his time, again, dedicating his service to our customers. One of the other great things about this presentation is the opportunity to hear a little bit from these folks about what their experience with NCTD has been like during their time. And we're going to have a short video now where we can hear some of that information from these wonderful employees.
Proud to be here because of all the connections and family and friends that I have now. Yes, I would say it has been great and wonderful to do that. I'm very proud of the people that I work with and being able to come here for the last 33 years with the leaders that I've had who are just willing to open up and give you what they have. You know, being from New Orleans, I came here in right sunny Southern California. Paying me back then, it was like almost $12 an hour to drive down Coast Highway, you know, with all the beautiful scenery there. And I couldn't believe it. I called back home and said, hey, they're paying me $12 to drive down. So it was awesome. It really was. What I do now and what I've been doing over the past 8 years of my career has been training and teach them how to drive a bus from the beginning to the end. Well, I don't just like what I do. I really love what I do. They tell you all the things that they want to do as far as their career, and to watch them go from the beginning and see them get their license, to see them on the road, to see them doing the things that they wanted to do to change their life. It's just a rewarding feeling to know that they're happy and they're living their life that they want to live. Over the last 4 years, I've been doing classroom work with the new hires, onboarding them, strictly working in the classroom, and doing reevaluations, training. I think the biggest thing that drives me is my own family. They don't have to do what? Provide for them. And secondly, going in to see people masturbate from one day to another, because that's how quick it can be for someone who can't do something. They just fall down on themselves, and you keep encouraging them. And then that next day when you show up, they get it, and to see the excitement and adulation they have, like, I got it. And it's like, you know, great to see that. You know, you can have love for people and do your job, right? Forgive them everything you can, and that's loving.
I would now like to introduce Mr. Alex Wiggins, General Manager of MV Transportation for our Oceanside services.
Madam Chair and members of the board, pardon my voice, it's that time of year, so my voice is leaving. And Mr. Executive Director, thank you so much for sharing a few moments with Mr. Mims to recognize his service to the North County Transit District. He has 30 dedicated years of service in North County, and we could not be more proud of him. So thank you, Mr. Mims.
Hello, everyone. Hi. First, I'd like to thank all the people I worked with that came with me to support me, and everybody over there. One of the trainees decided he wanted to come in today as well and share this with me. So that was very nice of him to share. Thank my immediate leader and Red. It's nothing, like I said before, Mr. Curtis. It's so nice to have leaders that give you everything they have. No matter what you ask them to do, they take the time out of their day to help you, and give you an opportunity to blossom and get what you're trying to do and be a better person at your job. Okay, so that's number one. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. And out of smiling faces, some people I kind of remember and stuff. And hopefully one day I'll be here helping out with bigger and better things, hopefully. Okay. It's good. Oh, sorry.
I'm just here to provide this plaque for you and to give thanks for what you're doing. Very very much grateful for the role that you play and what you're doing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you for the lovely presentation, Karen, and for the video. On behalf of the board, Mr. Mims and Orlando, thank you both very much. Are there any public comments on this item?
Oh, Madam Chair.
Board questions, anyone? Seeing no hands raised? Okay. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Next on our agenda is an update on the spring 2024 service change. Chris Orlando, our Chief of Planning and Communications Officer and Interim Chief Operations Officer Bus, that's a lot of jobs, and Katie Persons, Director of Service Planning, will be presenting this item. Chris and Katie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair Edson, and good afternoon, Board of Directors. We wanted to provide the board updates on two service-related items today. The first is an update on our spring service change. So Katie and I are going to provide you a update on where we are with the restoration of service and also an update on our efforts to restore the Sereno Valley Coaster Connection service. So we'll dive right into that. So first, breeze restoration. Next slide, please, Suhail. So as the board will recall, in April 2022, in response to the national bus operator shortage, we were forced to constrict frequencies on a number of routes. You see those routes here. Since that time, we've both been adding to our available operators and working to restore that service. So we wanted to bring you up to date on where we are with that effort. Next slide, please. This slide shows our progression in terms of both our restoration of the breeze service from April 2022 and also our progress that we are making with MV Transportation in terms of filling the bench of available operators. And so you see the jagged line there is our operator availability has continued to grow and also some of the milestones we've been able to reach in terms of restoring that service. Next slide, please. So this is where we sat in June of 2022. This was the worst of the operator shortage. We had about 75% of our needed operators available for work, which was what was causing the fleet to reduce the service and reduce the frequency. And so that was, this was the point at which we were at rock bottom. Next slide, please. This is where we sat last week. So we are in much better shape. We have about 92% of our operators available. And that's put us in a good position to not only pursue the full restoration of our service, but also expand service in a couple of strategic ways, which we'll talk about today. Next slide, please.
This slide provides a summary of the restoration thus far and our plan to complete full restoration by June of 2024. As Chris mentioned, Breeze 350, 302, and 303 have all seen restored service so far. In January of 2024, we will be implementing 10 additional daily weekday trips on Route 332. That's to create capacity for that route, which is pretty heavily impacted by school-based ridership. And then in June of 2024, we will fully restore the 332 in addition to the 351 and 352.
Another area that we wanted to update the board on is actually service expansion. So as the board knows, we've been working to supplement service that MTS previously operated. Next slide, please, Suhail. The Sereno Valley Coaster Connection service. As the board knows, The Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection Service is 5 fixed routes that are operated by MTS that all connect to our Sorrento Valley Coaster Station. They serve both the business centers to the east of the 5 and to the west of the 5, as well as UCSD, the UC Mall as well. They are important routes, not only for our service. This station is our 3rd busiest coaster station, but also for the region. It is the region's largest employment center. So next slide, please. As the board will recall, we provided an update in September that MTS had indicated due to a variety of factors, their intention to stop operating that service. MTS had been operating that service under an agreement with NCTD to do so, but they in October provided us notice that they would discontinue that service effective June 7th. Based on board feedback that we received in the September meeting, we began public outreach to look at how we might supplement that service, continue to offer it, and continue to offer that connection to our coaster station there at Sorrento Valley. Next slide, please. I'll let Katie do some overview of what we've seen so far.
Great, thank you. So to summarize the public outreach we've conducted thus far, we distributed a survey available in English and Spanish and received over 300 responses. We held an employer-focused webinar with 25 attendees. We presented an informational item to the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group. We also briefed local elected officials, biocom leadership, as well as sustainable transportation services, also known as Commute. And finally, our local union leadership is helping us to plan an interview with a veteran operator of the current service to gain their insight into the service as it stands today. So the next couple of slides are high-level insights from the survey that we conducted, and they provide a framework for our service concept development process and will also help us to tailor our next phase of public engagement. So the first insight question, we confirmed that usage of the service skews towards North County residents based upon their provided coaster station origin or destination. Next slide. The second highlight is related to how often people utilize coaster at Sorrento Valley Station. We asked this question to gain insight into travel patterns as a way to understand how remote work may have impacted this coaster station in particular. 2/3 of respondents indicated that they use coaster 3 or more times per week. Next slide. Our next takeaway is related to potential service models that we might deploy at this station. We asked if on-demand shuttles were introduced as a connection to or from the Sorrento Valley Coaster Station instead of buses on a set schedule, would they utilize it? And we provided a summary of what we define to be an on-demand service. On the left shows all survey responses, and on the right shows survey responses for current SVCC users. There are 2 key things to take away from this response. The first is that for either response set, either current users or all responses, we have a fairly large degree of hesitancy when it comes to on-demand services. The second is that each set features a fairly large proportion of don't know or unsure, which tells us that if we do decide to pursue an on-demand service, a detailed customer education campaign would be critical to that service's success. This question and additional questions that we asked related to that hesitancy for on-demand service will help us inform our final service proposal to the board and the public in the new year. Next slide. The last data point we'll highlight from the survey today is related to opportunities for improvement. When asked for the 2 most important things that NCTD could do to improve the experience at Sorrento Valley, respondents indicated expanded hours of operation and improved service frequency. So both of those responses go hand in hand when thinking about what opportunities we might have to serve more coaster trips than are currently served today, either by SVCC service or employer-operated shuttles in the area. So for that reason, any service that we propose for the station should complement existing employer-operated services and is not intended to replace an entirety. Slide. Again, these 4 points really just provide a framework for our service concept development when we think about higher level decisions like service model and potential structure. We do have a rich data set from this survey to help inform our service planning even more. That includes origin and destination data, station access data like walking and biking patterns, travel times and schedule preferences, respondents' existing experience with the service, and respondents' stated barriers to using on-demand service. Another resource we have available was released by SANDAG in November, which is their Remote Work Policies and Practices report. The report summarizes a survey of employers across the San Diego region, but specifically segments Tier 1 employment centers like Sorrento Valley. Within the report, 2/3 of employers responded that they offer at least 1 day of remote work, but only 28% of those employers estimate that the majority of their employees actually work remote at least 1 day a week, and only 16% of those employers estimate that their employees actually work remotely 3 or more days per week. All of that is a complicated way of saying that, yes, Sorrento Valley employers offer remote work, but the estimated proportion of employees that actually work remote on a regular basis is comparatively low. This tells us that while remote work is definitely more prevalent than before the pandemic, there is a large proportion of employees that continue to commute to work every day. Our last slide here has an update on timeline. We are currently developing service concepts based upon the survey results and initial public outreach. We plan to return to the board in February to present the proposed concepts and request that the board open a public hearing to authorize us to conduct additional outreach with those proposed concepts. We then anticipate closing the public hearing in April of 2024, which would include the results of the public outreach, any necessary modifications, and ultimately request the board's approval to launch the new service. Subject to board approval, NCTD anticipates launching that service June 10th of 2024.
Just a couple of takeaways, because there was a lot of information here, so you know what we're conveying. So first, on service restoration, we are on track to achieve full service restoration. And in fact, we're going to restore service on the 332 earlier than planned in January. And then our full service restoration will take place in June to align with the launch of the Sorrento Valley Coastal Connection service. We'll come back to the board in the February timeframe to confirm what that service model looks like and get the board's input on it at that point. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chris and Katie, for the sharing the positive news, especially regarding the early service restoration. I know that some people have been really excited for that to happen, and bus operator staffing. It's all good news. And the information on the Sorrento Valley Station service planning. I think we have some work to do on that. But before I move to board questions, Sue Heller, are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did receive 2 telephonic public comments, and they have been posted on our website for public inspection. And we do have 2 public commenters on Zoom, Ms. Melanie Cohn and Chris Kate that follows. Ms. Cohn, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. I'm Melanie Cohn. I'm Senior Director of Regional Policy and Government Affairs with Biocom California. We are the statewide association for the life sciences headquartered in Torrey Pines with about 1,700 members throughout the state and about 650 in San Diego County. So first, I just want to thank staff. They've been really approachable talking about this transition. And I attended the workshop that was held on November 2nd, where the staff talked about the intention to continue the service. So we really appreciate that. Biocom received notice that MTS was ending the service about 3 days before they voted on it. And I got a lot of questions and input from companies in the area with concerns about ending the service. We really want to support continuation of this service. I think under MTS, there were some issues, just the service not being advertised, even like not marking where the stops are within our employment area. So just, again, really appreciate staff working on this and very much support the ongoing service. And we'd love to help however we can connect employers with the service to support it and also to make sure that we're getting the word out about it. So thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Kate, are you with us, or Mr. Kate?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Chris Kate, and I'm speaking today as chair of the Mira Mesa Community Planning Group, which includes the neighborhood of Sorrento Valley. I'd like to first start by thanking staff for their outreach to our group. Following comments at the last MTS item in which the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection service was canceled, NCTD staff proactively reached out to us to schedule a time to present and discuss potential opportunities to continue service to our community. We are very grateful to them for including us in their outreach. In 2022, the San Diego City Council adopted the Mira Mesa Community Plan. The plan outlines a path to add 60,000 new residents and 24,000 new homes to our community, as well as over 32,000 new jobs. To accommodate this level of growth, the plan relies heavily in the increase in transit options, particularly from the Sorrento Valley Coaster Station to employment hubs. The expansion of employment opportunities and new homes in Mira Mesa have by and large been supported by the community, with the understanding that each community in San Diego has a role to play in the growth of our region. And if you travel through Sorrento Valley today, you will see no less than 3 cranes in the air with major projects currently underway. Employment hubs such as Sorrento Valley and Mira Mesa are locations in which we want to match new homes and jobs near transit hubs, and it's important transit options are available to residents and employees. Therefore, we encourage the board to take on the responsibility of providing this valuable service to our community, and we are supportive of alternative methods of providing the service to meet the needs of users of the service. The Mira Mesa Community Planning Group stands ready to support NCTD to make this successful. Thank you. I wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Does that conclude our speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much. Board members, I will start at that end with Board Member Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councilmember Kent Lee with City of San Diego's 6th District. And so the district I cover actually has a pretty significant representation of the routes that have been covered by the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection, including primarily in the communities of Sorrento Valley, as well as University City. I think as staff has shared, and thank you very much for the great presentation and the work on this. But there is a significant employment hub in those areas. And although some of the changes I think are a result of post-pandemic shifts in terms of usage, we do believe, and we've heard significant amounts of inquiry from both residents and employees that are within the vicinity of the desire to have this service continue. And as a result, we want to applaud NCTD as well as the staff for really taking on not just looking at how we can re-engage this coaster connection, but also looking at how we can actually do so in a way that better makes it usable for the businesses and the employees that are putting it to use. So on behalf of the City of San Diego, certainly would look forward to working with staff here and board moving forward to see how we can make this a success, both again for many of the residents who are traveling down, utilizing the service, but also the businesses that are benefiting from it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Contreras.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I have a few questions. I mean, it covered a lot, so I'm going to start with the 332 service restoration plan for Breeze. The 10 additional weekday trips, you indicated that those are due to a lot of different school activity, right? So are these going to be considered a school tripper?
No, the 10 trips will be throughout the day, but we focused on key times of the trips in the morning and afternoon to help alleviate some of that capacity issues related to the school travel times.
Okay. So not designated as a school tripper, but it will have the effect to help move a lot more people during peak
During
times.
those peak times in,
Okay.
in the middle of the day. Yep.
Awesome. Then moving on to the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection. You know, I know that this has been some time that we're looking at MTS transitioning out of this area, and this being the 3rd highest ridership station for us on the coaster is critical. The nature of this area is that it's essentially a transit desert. And as was mentioned by the public speakers and Councilmember Lee, this is a significant employment hub. So I'm really looking forward to how we're going to maintain service in this area. One of the things that I didn't see listed, but I remember from previous conversations with the board is the different routes that we're looking at. So are we still looking at the full spectrum of fixed route, on demand, and micro transit, and then a hybrid?
Yeah, we are looking at what opportunities we would have for fixed route and on demand or a combination of both. And so we tailored a lot of our questions to help us determine what mode of service might be the most successful in that area.
Okay. And to follow up on the survey responses, when asked about on demand, was there language talking about how that could be a premium service, which has an additional cost?
We did not say that there was an additional cost. We just described kind of the method of requesting a trip based on when you arrive or scheduling a trip. We asked a follow-up question about barriers to using on demand. And some folks did indicate a hesitancy related to cost. So that's something that we would need to factor into an on-demand kind of cost structure. Other barriers that they stated were concern over wait times in that area specifically. So that would kind of factor into what types of on-demand services we might look at, whether that's TNC, which would be unlikely, or kind of a microtransit type service, which we'd be able to offer with NCT operators and vehicles if we were to go with that proposal.
Okay. So I think that's just really important because as we have discussed, this would be a premium service. If it's not, that's great if we have the funding to be able to do something that's kind of just standardized with the rest of our costs for travel. But I think, that's definitely something that we need to flag if people are already concerned. When it comes to the wait times, and you said, are we looking a little bit more towards TNC versus our own, or we haven't made that decision
We
yet?
suspect that some of the hesitancy might be related to folks know and understand TNCs, but they may
I
not
see.
know and understand
Okay.
microtransit.
Okay.
So we think that that kind of factors into that hesitancy. Some folks also indicated that they have a very kind of recurring regular schedule and they didn't want to add an extra step into their commute if they didn't have to, which would be that kind of requesting a ride via an app.
Versus
we
just
think-
knowing
versus
that
just
is
showing
okay.
up
Right.
and you get on the bus. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that's, one of the factors of when you're riding public transit to not have to think so much about connecting
Mhm.
and have those seamless connections. So I am just a little bit concerned. I know that, with TNC, we have issues where you don't have enough, operators on that side of the spectrum as well. And sometimes you can't get a ride, right?
Mhm.
And so I think what it seems like, depending on which direction we go, there needs to be a lot of education if we're going to do premium service to distinguish between what it looks like to have an NCTD plus model with our own operator versus, some of the hesitancy and lack of continuity when you're using TNC like Uber and Lyft. And then when we're talking about expanding our hours of operation, was there any kind of window of time that people are looking at? Are they saying we want one that's earlier and one that's later, or?
Yeah, we had kind of a combination of comments. Some were requesting earlier coaster trip connections so that they could get to work earlier. Some wrote in that their employer offered shuttle had a span of service that ended earlier than was useful for them. And so sometimes they would use the SVCC service to kind of tack on to that employer offered shuttle. And then they also indicated some kind of later evening coaster trips that they would like connections to.
Okay. And since, we've done a good job increasing the number of operators, which has allowed us to increase some of these other services, are we needing to continue to build up staff if we're going to do any kind of additional service in this area? Do
Yes,
we have a
that-
plan for that?
Yeah, staffing is a primary consideration in being able to do this, and also the microtransit, which you'll hear in the next presentation. So we're on a good trajectory with staffing, so we're confident we can get there. The other step we've taken with MV, our contractor, is you saw in that presentation that we're looking at operators available for work because there's a large percentage that are on long-term leaves of absence. And so we've work with MV to say, let's free up those spots so we can backfill and have more operators available. We just have to make sure if someone comes off long-term leave that we have a spot for them. But given our natural attrition, we don't see that as a challenge.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll reserve the rest of my questions for our next presentation.
Thank you very much. Board Member Desmond.
Karina took my microphone. Anyway, no, really. But thank you for the presentation. I guess I'm kind of skeptical on the Sorrento Valley Coaster connection, particularly if MTS is leaving it. We're picking it up. It's like there must be a reason that they're leaving. Because if it was fruitful, they would have kept it, I would imagine. But I am glad we're looking at it. I'm glad that we're looking at other options. So we're not really looking at replacing the 5 routes that they were doing, right? Or are we? We're just looking at combination or hybrid or what?
It's a combination. But one of the things that we're learning through the outreach is that those routes may not have been optimized. And I'll give you a prime example of that. One of the routes, we had several responses from, there's a Google facility in this area, but the route stops about a mile short of the Google facility. But we found out through our survey that a number of Google employees actually still take the route and then walk that last mile. So we think there are a number of enhancements that we can make, such as that, to help improve the service. The other thing I'll note is, the service was significantly impacted by the COVID period and the remote work. But also there was a 2-month work stoppage as remote work started to tail off and people started to come back. It was right when the time MTS had the 2-month work stoppage. And so the ridership was hurt by that as well. We think the combination of improving the routes, better communication with the employers and having some consistency there that we can build ridership.
Well, one of the things I used to ride the coaster downtown pre-pandemic, and about 2/3 of the people got off at Sorrento Valley Station. If you're going south down the coast, Oceanside, and just as a chart showed, Oceanside, Carlsbad, and I think Poinsettia were to get on, and then 2/3 of people get off at Sorrento Valley. But I did see a lot of Qualcomm and other entities having their buses there. Is there any chance of displacing those, or are they going to? I mean, I'm not sure how we work hand in hand, or with or without them. It seems like if they didn't have that, it might be a better opportunity for us.
Yeah, so we're engaging with the business community both in terms of making sure that this service doesn't compete but complements what they're doing, and then also if there are ways in which they can help us with this service, both in terms of building awareness among their employees, but also many of the property owners in that area need VMT and TDM offsets. And so they have expressed some interest in participating and helping us with the service for through that.
And I guess is the plan to charge for this service? Because I'm imagining these companies will operate these buses for free.
They do, yeah. So yes, there would be
It's kind of hard to compete with free, I guess. But I'm glad you're looking at that. And then, as you mentioned, the return to work option, or I guess factor, due to pandemic and things like that. But I noticed, unfortunately, in item 5, the coaster performance in September 2023 was 36% below pre-pandemic levels. And then and I know this is just a month, but then in October of 2023, just a couple months ago, it was almost 48% below pre-pandemic levels. So I know that's not it's just tough to get beyond that work at home type atmosphere. I mean, my son he took a job where he didn't have to go in, and that was kind of the push. So I'm just curious, how are we going to overcome that?
So I have a very sad reason for that decline. As we've reported previously to the board, Padre games add about 66% to our weekday ridership.
Oh, so you blame it on the Padres?
So the Padres did not make the playoffs,
yeah, you're right. Okay.
which negatively impacted our ridership in October. And it is a sad but true fact. And it really highlights that the nature of our ridership has shifted. We really do focus on and lean into that leisure rider now. It's become a critical source of ridership for us. And so commuters still very important, but we recognize both, in terms of the Padres, but also Comic-Con, Del Mar Fair, the races, all of that, making sure our services work well for leisure riders as well is critically important.
And I think I heard you wanted to implement this new, whatever it is, on June 10th?
June 7th.
So when are you bringing it to us?
February.
Oh, a couple months. Okay. All right. Well, look forward to it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Board Member Jenkins.
Yes, couple of questions here. On page 10, you mentioned you had 305 survey responses. What is the ridership? Like what percentage of the riders that use that did we get the responses from, or did we expand beyond that?
In this past fiscal year, we had about 30,000 riders for the whole year, so about 2,500 per month.
Okay, so we really have a small percentage of responses to this survey.
Well, actually, I'd say the opposite. We've had a really good response to this
Okay.
survey. For comparison, when MTS did their outreach around discontinuing the service, they got 26 responses.
Oh.
And so
really good.
I'm
Fantastic.
actually very proud of the team's outreach, both in terms of riding the service and engaging with customers that were actually using it, but then also doing the supplemental outreach to Biocom and other business communities, to the local planning groups, all of that to encourage responses.
Okay, good. And then there was mention about, I believe, the current MTS service provider who's been a long time operator of it. Are we exploring, it sounded like we might be exploring a relationship with that operator, or would they be our own?
Yeah, no, that was purely informational, just
Okay.
to get a sense of what the operators see as they use,
Okay.
as they provide the service. Yeah, that was just another data point for us in our research.
Okay, and then when we talked about this a couple of months ago, one of the issues that came up was that we could have some facility issues because it is outside of our sphere, more or less. Is that part of what you'll be investigating as you move forward between now and February to make a decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are currently working with MTS on an agreement for the transition of the service. And one of the points in that agreement is they've indicated a willingness for us to use their Copley facility, which is nearby to store our vehicles. So we're working on the particulars of that. It's not a long-term solution, so we'll need to come up with a supplemental solution, but it'll get us through the initial start of the service.
Okay, and then last question, if my math is correct from your one slide about the bringing back the service to full capacity in June, it looks like we need 23 more operators, I believe. Is that going to be attainable? Because we've talked about how many times operators get started in the program and drop off. Do we have enough time to get to the capacity we need to be by June?
Yeah, I think we're on a good, as we showed in the earlier slide, we're on a good trajectory on the operators. So we're confident we can get sufficient operators to do the service.
Okay, and then is there a plan B in case we don't?
That's part of what we're looking at in terms of the service profile, whether we do on demand or we do fixed routes. So that's part of what that assessment will be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, board members? No? Okay, with that, thank you very much for that presentation. Chris, I don't think you're going anywhere. Our final presentation is an update on the NCTD Plus Microtransit Service Pilot Program. These two items obviously rolled a little bit into each other. For this item, Chris Orlando, who is once again wearing two chief hats, will be presenting with Nick Sofel, our Director of Strategic Planning and Transit Systems. Chris and Nick, we're listening.
Thank you, Chair Edson. So wanted to provide a secondary update for the board because also in June, we are working toward starting an initial pilot of our microtransit service. First slide, please, Suhail. As the board knows, in June, it approved a 5-year contract with Spare Labs to serve as the software platform to enable us to do microtransit. Microtransit plays a really important role in the transit landscape of different services. And so we've been working over the last 6 months to not only develop and implement the software platform for the customer facing component of microtransit, our backend component of how we run the service, but then also how we will implement the service, where we will do it, what that service profile looks like. And so what we wanted to provide you with today is an initial overview of our approach to microtransit to get your input and your feedback about the trajectory that we're headed on to make sure we're on the right track, take your feedback. And then as with the prior presentation, we'd come back to you in the future with in February with our recommended plan for implementation of our first microtransit pilot. So Nick and I are going to walk you through what that approach is like and the criteria we're using to look at microtransit and how we will go about implementing. Next slide, please. So microtransit fits within this broader landscape of what we call it here in the region, flexible fleets. So these are alternatives to traditional transit, but play a role in filling out really the landscape of options available to folks to drive their mobility. Everything from scooters and micromobility, bird vehicles. There's been a lot of attention, a lot of good progress made on the neighborhood electric vehicles and the microtransit. So microtransit fits within those options and is one of the many ways in which the region is looking at doing flexible fleets. What we've been developing is our approach to that through microtransit and how we will go about implementing flexible fleets through our microtransit program. Next slide, please. So here's where microtransit fits in terms of a modal comparison. So you see the neighborhood electric vehicle there on the left. There's been a very successful pilot here in Oceanside around the neighborhood electric vehicles. They serve a really good role in dense, short trips, in downtown type areas. And then on the right, you see our traditional fixed route Breeze service, which does longer runs, can have a bunch more capacity and have that fixed route characteristics. And then right in the middle there, you see microtransit. So microtransit sort of fits in between in the sense of it is a more flexible on-demand service. It has higher capacity, higher range, can move more people, and is really intended to do two things. One, connect to our fixed route assets, whether that be our Breeze routes, our Sprinter, or our Coaster, and make sure that it serves as a driver and connector to those routes, or fill gaps where perhaps service is hard or expensive to do, and we're not able to do fixed route in an efficient way. So the microtransit can help us address those areas. Next slide, please. So Nick will walk us through how we're going about the microtransit implementation project.
Thank you, Chris. First, I'm going to start off with the timeline. This is the timeline of the Spare Labs contract, the software provider that has the artificial intelligence platform to be able to enable folks to be able to reserve their trips via microtransit. So we're currently working on the microtransit deployment. We're also working on some additional features, such as integrating the system with the Pronto fare system. Next slide. The first step in the pilot project is really to identify where we're going to pilot microtransit. And so there's a lot of interest around it. And so we want to make sure that we are identifying the most suitable areas where there's very strong community support, but where there's also a nexus with achieving certain mobility goals and outcomes. Next slide. So some of the areas that have proven nationally very effective for microtransit service implementation are these three use cases. The first use case is to be able to provide a level of service in an area that is hard to serve by fixed route. So these can be areas that are a little more rural in nature, where it is either unsafe or inefficient to bring a fixed route bus through a particular neighborhood in these areas. The second use case would be where we want to facilitate greater first and last mile connectivity to our existing investments in rail, especially where we might have fixed routes that have 30-minute frequencies or more, where we can provide potentially better wait times to be able to get to that first and last mile connection. The third use case is in areas where there might be very limited pedestrian or bike infrastructure, where folks could not reasonably take another non-motorized mode to be able to get to and from transit. Provides an opportunity to provide those folks connections to transit. Next slide. So these are the potential zones that we're looking at to perform a suitability analysis to figure out prioritization of potential service for microtransit. These areas encompass those three potential use cases that I just explained, as well as they're very consistent with SANDAG's smart growth areas and planning areas for microtransit mode that's been done. They've done extensive planning throughout the region, and many of these areas are very consistent with that initiative through SANDAG. Next slide. So I mentioned suitability analysis. This is going to be the way we're going to look at and prioritize which areas have the greatest suitability for a very successful microtransit pilot program. And so first up is equity. We want to make sure that the service is equitable, is serving folks who most need the service, and be able to fill that transit need. The second piece is transit connectivity. We certainly want to make sure that these microtransit is offered in areas that can provide those meaningful connections. We look at points of interest. So we want to make sure we're hitting all like local level circulators and local level destinations, looking at schools, looking at business sites, medical, shopping, entertainment destinations, civic centers. We want to make sure that there's a vast variety of uses and points of interest in each zone. And then finally, efficiency. We want to make sure that if we're providing a service, it's an efficient service. And particularly, we want to make sure that the wait times are going to be consistent with what the customer expectations are for microtransit service. Next slide. As we implement the microtransit pilot, we are going to be measuring our success throughout the entire program. It's very important. So a couple of these you see here, like cost per vehicle hour, cost per passenger trip, these are efficiency measures. So they're really gained at what is the efficiency of the service. But we want to pair that with metrics that are a lot more customer facing, like customer satisfaction, customer feedback. What's the number of trips that exceed a wait time threshold? So we want to make sure we're offering a very positive experience for our customers in rolling out this service. Next slide. For the branding for the service, we're going to use the NCTD Plus brand. I think that's kind of known. We're going to use that brand, and we went ahead and made a couple of concepts for vehicle wraps. And really the idea here is we want to have this vehicle be unique. We want this vehicle to pass someone on the street and have folks actually turn their head and go, whoa, what was that? And then they look at it and they see, oh, it's NCTD, and learn more about it. That's really what we were looking to do here. These diverse animated characters that you see on the side of the conceptual bus wrap, they've been used in some of our other publications in NCTD, and we've gotten really good feedback from the public on them. So we'd be really excited to be able to, put those out on the street and have folks see this really, dynamic, different type of bus wrap out there in the service. Next slide. So the next steps moving forward, we're going to conduct the suitability analysis so we can start to prioritize the zones. In tandem with that, we do want to start doing public involvement and speaking out to the public. We use some of the initial public involvement or initial feedback to help create some of the zones that we were putting into suitability, but we certainly want to refine that as time goes on, go back to the public and, do these zones really match with what the needs are on the ground level. And then finally, we want to be able to launch our first microtransit pilot in June. And then look for beyond that, how we continue to expand the service. And to do that, we're going to be looking at, making sure we have areas where we have operational financial capacity. We talked a little earlier about the need to make sure we have operators, make sure we have vehicles, and to make sure we have the financial capacity to be able to move forward and to do this sustainably for the long term. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Well, thank you for the presentation, Chris and Nick. Very informative. Before we move to board comments and questions, Sue, do we have any public speakers on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I have a question. So we are wanting to do these pilots. We have 14 identified areas. How many of these can we do?
So the number that we do will be developed by a couple of factors. So funding, available operators, and available vehicles. We're in good position for June to launch for sure one zone. If things go well, potentially two zones.
And the cost per zone?
So the initial zone is the most expensive because you're standing up a service. So you can imagine that's the most expensive. So it's about 1.2 million a year for one zone. If we were to do a full pilot with 3 zones, if we got to that level, it would be about $3 million a year. And that's the fully loaded operational cost, all of that included.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Patel.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for the presentation. I think, Carlsbad was a prime pilot a few years ago with regards to the Carlsbad connector. So my question is with regards to that in some sense. And I know we didn't talk about specific zones here per se, but I know it was very, very successful. And due to the pandemic, we did obviously interrupt the service there. So curious as to, I know my city was intrigued and interested to know whether or not we'll be on the list. And I know you can't say yes or no, but curious to hear if Carlsbad Connector is going to be coming back.
So one of the zones that we're looking at, it does replicate similar to what we did in the Carlsbad Connector.
Okay.
So one of the zones will be putting the suitability test.
Got it. And that was something that was not just NCTD, that was NCTD, Sandag, and then the city of Carlsbad.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, it was funded by all 3
Mhm.
entities. Correct.
Okay, great. That was the only easy question for you.
Board Member Hensy.
Thank you. This is really exciting. We talk about this all the time in Encinitas. And so thank you for bringing it forward. My comment is just, I'm so glad to see schools being included in this because this is definitely a huge need that we have at all of our schools, not only to get students to and from, but also to relieve and alleviate some of the congestion that we experience in the school zones. I'm so jealous of the Go Side little shuttle whenever I see that around. We need one of those in Encinitas, especially for the summer. Just to alleviate a lot of that beach traffic. And, obviously, I think part of the success of this program would be that it's seasonal and that it changes based on if it's summertime or if it's the time of year when everybody's in school. I think the idea of cost sharing, as you did with the Carlsbad connector, is also attractive to us in Encinitas. We've only just started to consider, it's not development impact fees. You use the term in my briefing and
The TDM offsets.
right.
traffic
Yeah, we've
demand
only
offset
just
offsets.
started to think about developing that program, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to accrue enough money to be able to put forward a substantial amount to cost share. And then obviously the parking impacts that we have now, we just are going to extend our outdoor dining. So we're losing a lot of spots in the downtown area. And this is one of the avenues people see to alleviate that. So those are my comments and thank you so much.
Board Member Jenkins?
A couple questions. You might have just answered this. How long will the pilot run? Did I hear you say something about 3 years or?
No, we haven't defined the time frame for the individual pilots yet. But our intention is to launch the initial pilot and then expand in scale as we learn more. So we hope that with available funding, available vehicles, available operators, we can continue to expand and scale the service.
Okay. And then speaking about the Carlsbad connector that we had going, is some of that information going to be reviewed or is it different than this? Because that was more from transit directly to businesses.
Yeah, we're definitely using what we learned from that service to inform how we develop this service. Absolutely.
Okay. And then so I think it's important that we have the pilots an area that's going to give us the most beneficial results. So the pilot is successful. So I'm guessing you're looking at dense areas of density, which some of the areas aren't quite there yet. Like I'm thinking about in North City, we have on the west side of Twin Oaks, we have a lot of homes going in there. So it might not be quite as dense in some areas. How are you going to?
Yeah, that's definitely part of how we're doing the suitability analysis on the zones. We've gotten a lot of interest from communities in this service, but it is expensive service and we can't do it everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't fit everywhere. And so that's part of what we're looking at is, and what we hope to learn through the pilot is where does it work best and where does it, offer us those benefits of helping to drive ridership to our fixed routes and our Sprinter service, things like that.
Okay. And how will colleges impact the process? Because we have one in Oceanside, one in Oceanside, two in San Marcos. There's a lot of, will you be looking at the ridership from the colleges?
Yeah, absolutely. The points of interest, which would include educational institutions, is one of the primary suitability items. So if there is a large demand driver within a zone, that will be a driving force looking at if that zone is one of the ones we would choose.
Okay. And where is the funding coming from?
For the current pilot, it would be coming out of our operating. We've budgeted for this in the current fiscal year, so it would be out of that. And then we would for the pilot, given the timing, it would be part of the FY25 operating budget that you'll see coming up here in the next couple of months.
Okay. And will the cities need to contribute any funds initially?
So not initially. So our goal is to launch the pilot, learn, what we can through the pilot program, refine it. The scaling and the growth of the program, because it is expensive, we will be looking at a variety of funding options to do that. There are grant opportunities for services like this, both within the state, nationally, and locally as well. Another vehicle for funding would be much like we did with the Carlsbad connector, where the cities participate and help us if the city, has a zone that we've crafted in the city, but perhaps doesn't, rank high in terms of suitability, but the city comes to the plate and says, we'd like this in our community and we can bring some funding to the table. That would help us do, expand in those ways. So we'll be looking at a variety of ways to fund it and as it works, scale and expand it.
And I think all of us have climate action plans and funds that are being expended to meet those climate action plan numbers. It seems like maybe, there might be some funds, I'm not committing anything, but maybe there might be, everybody might kind of think about if this is successful, using some funds that are earmarked for climate action plan, because it could help you on your points.
Yeah,
in
we're
your
both,
climate action plan.
we're both looking at how we could be a source of climate action plan benefits for cities, but also in terms of developers when they're doing development projects also need to have those same offsets. So this could be a source for them to get those offsets as well.
Okay, last question. So you gave us the information about the operators needed by June of 23, I think. Is this included in that 23 or is this on top of
So
it?
this is included, the pilot is included as are, we have the initial vehicles already in place for this service. They're set aside and ready to go for this.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Contreras.
We're being nice right now. We're sharing this microphone. It wasn't in our budget to have each person have a microphone. So, okay, so NCTD Plus, this is also a premium service, right?
It is, yes.
Okay. So, when it comes to, well, premium service means that it's going to cost additional money compared to our standard service for the customer and for us. Yeah. So, and one of the reasons that I bring this up is that we have our Youth Opportunity Pass. And in the past, when I've asked, is there a congruency of no fare with folks that have the Youth Opportunity Pass? The answer is that that this is a premium service. Is that still correct?
That's still how we're viewing it. This is not only is it premium service, it's expensive service to operate. And so our, as with other premium services, our intent would not be to include the Youth Opportunity Pass within this or other discounts. We haven't settled on the pricing for the fares at this juncture. That's one of the things we're still settling on. But our concept is that we align it with our Lyft service, which operates similarly in an on-demand way. And so we think that's a good sort of model to price it. But we also do want to incentivize group rides. So folks who ride in large groups, we want to incentivize that. And we also want to incentivize connections to our transit centers. And so we would look at doing discounts if you're taking this service to a Sprinter station or a coaster station, we would look to discount those rides.
Okay. That's an interesting point. And it looks like the NCTD Plus is going to be launched in this purple area of San Diego. Is that the Sorrento?
Yes.
Area?
Is one of the zones we're looking at in conjunction with the prior presentation is would this work in the Sorrento Valley area as well? That's one of the zones we're looking at.
Okay. So help me understand, just for clarification, the previous presentation, we're looking at anything between a fixed route to micro transit and potentially a hybrid. Is this what I'm seeing on my screen right now for the zones for analysis for microtransit? Is this going to be launched before there is a direction for on the previous presentation between fixed? Okay.
Yeah, they'll be together, and we would the Sorrento Valley, if that public outreach and input and analysis shows that an on-demand service would work well in that area, then one of the zones that we would implement in June would be potentially there.
Okay.
That works. So it would be this same service.
Okay. So essentially what we're doing, I'm just trying to get the timeline straight in my head. So for the Sorrento Valley connection, we will be moving forward with microtransit in this geofenced area regardless.
No, we'll come back to you in February with the exact service plan. So we haven't
Okay.
made that determination yet, but we wanted to give you a chance to give us some input.
Okay, and so if we went to microtransit, as the single way that we move forward with connecting folks to that Sorrento Valley, coaster station, would this area be the same area or would it change what I'm seeing here that's geo-fenced in?
Yeah,
purple?
all of those 14 areas are conceptual at this point, so
Okay.
we'll refine them. So it might not be that exact area, but it's conceptually what we were looking at. So that, but the exact zone we'll work to define based on the analysis and then based on the public input that we receive after we finalize what we're doing.
Okay, because I can't really tell because it's hard to zoom in, but it looks like some of the fixed routes might not be represented in this geo-fenced area.
Yeah, and so the prior plan in the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection model, if we did a hybrid execution of that, we wouldn't do all of those fixed routes, all of those 5 fixed routes. It would be in place of, so it would be some of the fixed route and then micro transit for all of the fixed route. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. And it also seems that NCTD plus, these might be like CNG buses versus electric buses. Is that?
There are the transit vans you see now that we use for our lift service. So they're the ones you see on the street now, just with different branding.
Okay, but those are CNG, right?
Yeah,
Or-
those are CNG. No, those are normal traditional flips. Yeah.
Is that diesel?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do have in the last presentation, you'll see, we do have a funding request in for additional vehicles that we're looking at alternative fuels for.
Okay. And so does that mean that we are not going to at all in our micro transit look at neighborhood electric vehicles?
Not in this iteration. And as you know, Sandag has a pretty active program around that. So this micro transit, the way we presented it, fits better in our service model. So this is where we're focused at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, just because, I mean, I know that Sandag in conjunction with some other cities do have neighborhood electric vehicles. However, most of our cities in our NCTD service area do not. And yeah, I'm just not sure. I would hate to miss an opportunity where we could work with Sandag to potentially have neighborhood electric vehicles in some of the hot spots of, high ridership between the grocery store and your house in some of our cities. So I can just follow up with you offline on that. But yeah, just curious to see if that's something that we would be working with Sandag with in our service area, but it doesn't seem like that's something we're going to be doing at this
No,
time.
we absolutely will. And again, we don't see these services as competing. They're meant to be complementary. And
Mhm.
so, so there are areas where the neighborhood electric vehicles work well, and there are others where microtransit is the better solution. And so we're absolutely looking at, what's available and how they fit together and that they don't compete.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you. Any other board members? Board Member Garcia?
Thank you. Really look forward to the presentations that we'll have later, but I do have probably just one question. So as we're looking at this, I figure one of the measures of our success is also how much new ridership is going to increase. And I kept trying to hear, where is that? Do we have any, based on surveys or numbers or anything that we believe that's going to happen? Because it is absolutely critical that we move the ones that we need to move, that need additional services and times. But how is it looking for increasing ridership?
Our suitability analysis is going to use a tool that's by our microtransit software provider, Spare Labs. They have a tool that helps us to estimate ridership based on a lot of inputs. And so that is one of the key drivers of the suitability analysis. We place in the information like densities and trips and origins, destinations, points of interest, and then it can help us to try to model where ridership would be. And so that is absolutely a key component of that suitability analysis.
Okay, and then one of my other questions is in regard to communities that may not have such a high socioeconomic driving force. as other communities, but yet have a very high ridership. And it certainly seems like if we're going to be looking at other sources of income that are going to be based on income from our riders, or cities that may not have budgets that it would be a lot harder to allow that. How is that equity going to be worked in?
The equity functions, the equity piece of the suitability analysis, looks at comprehensive equity. So it's looking at household incomes, it's looking at vehicle availability in the household, it's looking at areas that are designated as transportation disadvantaged, and trying to basically overlay all these different equity factors on top of each other to get to an equity score for each area, right? And so the areas that matches, right, we have the most amount of equity points that kind of translates in and through the suitability analysis. But equity is a key component. And so the idea is to make sure that we are considering equity, as a key factor. It's 25% of the suitability analysis. Those points come from those equity factors.
Okay, so I'll look forward to the next presentation. To look at that. Thank you.
All right. Any other hands? Any other interest? I just wanted to make a couple of comments after listening to the questions and comments from my colleagues, as well as considering the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for asking most of the questions I had. It's always good. But just listening to these two last presentations, I think that, frequency and reliability are always something that really matters. We heard that in the data that was presented on the last one. And I think that all of us would like our cities to be one of the number one of the 14 or two, whichever one. And I think that we all have compelling reasons for that, whether it's school drop off and pickup and seniors needing to shop or get to medical appointments, the business community wanting to move customers and visitors from commercial district to commercial district, or lowering our VMT and GHG. I think that we would all love to see this happen in our cities, and I think we need to find ways to fund it. So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda, we have 3 sets of minutes. We've been very busy lately. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the November 16th, 2023 regular board meeting?
Move to approve by Contreras.
I'll second.
Motion by Contreras, second by Hensy. Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bob Patel,
Aye.
Board Alternate Gasterland,
Okay, I think I'm here. Aye.
thank you. Board Member Hensy,
Yes.
Board Member Garcia,
Aye.
Board Member Robinson,
I think I have to abstain. I wasn't here.
Board Member Desmond, Board Member Jenkins,
Aye.
Board Chair Edson,
Aye.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Hensy to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 16th, 2023, motion passes. Board Member Robinson abstains.
And was board member Gasterland present at that meeting? Or did she read the minutes?
I read the minutes.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the November 28th, 2023 special board meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Bob Patel.
Second, Contreras.
Second by Contreras. Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bob Patel,
Aye.
Board Alternate Gasterland,
Aye.
Board Member Hensy,
Yes.
Board Member Garcia,
I abstain. I was not at that meeting.
Board Member Robinson,
Abstain.
Board Member Desmond.
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins,
Aye.
Board Chair Edson,
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Vice Chair Bob Patel, seconded by Board Member Contreras to approve the minutes of the special board meeting of November 28th, 2023. Motion passes. Board Member Garcia and Board Member Robinson abstain.
Thank you. I'll move approval of the minutes of the December 4th, 2023 special board meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
Second motion by Edson, second by Bob Patel. Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bob Patel,
Aye.
Board Alternate Gasterland,
Abstain, since I was not at that meeting.
Board Member Hensy,
Yes.
Board Member Garcia,
Aye.
Board Member Robinson,
Abstain.
Board Member Desmond.
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins.
Aye.
Board Chair Edson.
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Chair Edson, seconded by Vice Chair Bob Patel to approve the minutes of the special board meeting of December 4, 2023. Motion passes with Board Alternate Gasterland and Board Member Robinson abstains.
Thank you. There are 15 items on the consent calendar for today. Suhail, have any members of the public requested that consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to speak on this item has ended. Board members, do you wish to pull any items from consent? Board Member Desmond?
I'd like to count, you said there, how many agenda items? Because I have 18, I'm showing.
4 through 18.
Oh, 4 through 18, okay. All right, public math, okay, here we go. On item 17, I just had a kind of a comment on 17. I'm not gonna rock the boat on this, because I understand the nominating committee came up with recommendations for chair and vice chair. I'm just, I think this is for the future. I don't know that our nominating committee should be nominating the chairs of the committees. Committees aren't even formed yet for next year, and yet I get the committees get to a vote on that. So I guess what I'm saying in this indirect way is I'd like to be on the nominating committee next year. And I think we should keep our hands off the committees themselves and let them elect their committee members. So I'm going to leave it alone for item 17 today. I'll be voting in favor, but I do think that committees should nominate their own chairs. Do that. So I get it for the board, for vice chair and chair, but hoping to change that next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. So no one's pulling anything, is that correct? I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second, Contreras.
Motion by Jenkins, second by Contreras. Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bob Patel.
Aye.
Board Alternate Gasterland.
Aye.
Board Member Hensy.
Yes.
Board Member Garcia.
Aye.
Board Member Robinson.
Aye.
Board Member Desmond.
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins.
Aye.
Board Chair Edson.
Aye.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Member Jenkins, seconded by Board Member Contreras to approve consent items 4 through 18, motion passes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a recommendation to approve the appointment of a new Chief Executive Officer for NCTD. The board, and especially the executive committee, have worked diligently over the past several months to identify and recruit a new CEO. Karen Tucholsky, NCTD's Chief Operations Officer, Operations Support Services, is here to present a recommendation to the full board for our consideration. Karen, welcome back. You have our attention.
Thank you, Chair Edson, and welcome again. Thank you again. Good afternoon, board members. So the NCTD Chief Executive Officer is engaged via employment agreement with the district. In accordance with board policy, the Executive Committee initiated the recruitment process to develop recommendations relative to selection of a new CEO. Committee meetings commenced in September, and Coffin Associates was engaged to provide executive recruiting services. Through COF, a robust national search was conducted that produced 46 applications, of which 6 were interviewed by the Executive Committee. From those interviewed, 2 candidates were advanced for interview with the full board of directors. Following interviews with the board, a candidate was selected for advancement to open session consideration, and direction to negotiate a draft employment agreement was provided to the board chair and general counsel. As per direction, negotiations with the selected candidate were conducted, and a draft proposed employment agreement was developed, which is before you today for formal consideration. The recommendation before you now is to approve the proposed employment agreement between the North County Transit District and Sean Donaghy for the position of Chief Executive Officer with a commencement date of March 1, 2024 for a 5-year base term and under the terms and conditions detailed in the proposed employment agreement. That concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you, Karen. Suhail, do we have any public comments on this item?
We may after the vote.
Okay, thank you. Any board questions or comments? Okay. Board member, or I'm sorry, Vice Chair Patel.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank staff for the amazing and tremendous amount of work that went into this. I know we had many meetings and many conversations, and I just have to say it was a process that was really amenable and easy to follow. And so thank you for all the hard work for making sure that we had the best option before us.
Happy to be of service. Thank you.
Yes, and I would ditto that one. Thank you. Board member Contreras.
Yeah, and I'll be a third on that one. And I also want to thank my executive committee. We put a lot of work into it, and you know, we had an incredible amount of well-qualified candidates before us. So I'm really proud of the work that we did together, and I just want to personally thank everybody on the executive team.
Thank you for that. Okay, well, I think it's time to call the vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Board Member Hensy.
Should I make a motion?
Yes, please. Oh,
Okay.
I was moving too fast.
I'll move approval of staff's recommendation, which is the employment agreement before us.
Second.
Motion by Hensy, second by Bhat Patel. Please call the vote now.
Vice Chair Patel,
Aye.
Board Alternate Gasterlin,
Aye.
Board Member Hensy,
Yes.
Board Member Garcia,
Aye.
Board Member Robinson,
Aye.
Board Member Desmond.
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins,
Aye.
Board Chair Edson,
Aye.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Board Member Hensy, seconded by Vice Chair Bhat Patel to approve the employment agreement for the position of Chief Executive Officer, motion passes. Madam Chair, we have a public speaker.
Well, thank
Mr.
you for that.
Shandani.
Before we call that public speaker, I just wanted to mention a couple of things as was brought forward by my colleagues on the executive committee. There was a lot of work that went into this, and we did have some amazingly qualified candidates. And I'm very excited by the choice that we've made. Mr. Donaghy is coming to us from CTRAN in Vancouver, Washington. He brings more than 25 years of experience in public and private intermodal transportation, intergovernmental relations, and executive leadership. In other words, he has the experience and leadership qualities necessary to manage a unique transit agency such as NCTD, which includes bus, hybrid rail, and heavy rail. Under Mr. Donaghy's leadership, CTRAN was twice named the North American Public Transit System of the Year by APTA, the American Public Transportation Association. Mr. Donaghy, congratulations and welcome aboard. I look forward to working with you in the new year, and I believe that you are our speaker.
Thank you. I won't take up too much of your time. I just want to say, I'm very thankful to be here, very thankful for the support of the board and the executive committee. It was evident to me throughout the process that there's some amazing work happening here in North County, and I really wanted to be a part of that. And so I just want to say thanks to all the amazing work that the staff is doing here. It's clear that there's a future for this agency, and they're pushing hard to make that a reality. So I just want to say thanks to the board and very much thanks to the staff. So thank you very much.
Okay, the final action item on today's agenda is a recommendation to approve the district's 2024 discretionary grants strategy. Chris Orlando, Chief Planning and Communications Officer, and Mary Dover, Governmental Affairs Officer, will be presenting this item. Chris and Mary, you have our attention.
Thank you, Chair Edson. We recognize that we are the only thing standing between you and your holiday break, so we will make this efficient. So sorry about that. So each year the board approves its discretionary grant strategy. This presentation covers our previous grant opportunities and what we've done as an agency over the last year, as well as the overview of our priorities for the coming year. Next slide, please. We do this not only on our own, but in collaboration with our local, state, and regional partners. Much of the funding that we get is for our system, but it's done through a regional effort, both with SANDAG and at times with the state of California going to the federal government. So the efforts you see highlighted in this presentation are really a collaborative effort with all of our partners. Next slide, please. Very proud to say that we had a very successful calendar year 2023. the total amount that we were able to get in discretionary funding, so this is funding that we achieved competitively, was $250 million. Mary carries the primary oar for getting those funds, so I'll let her highlight some of the wins for the year.
Thank you. So the board is familiar with most of these projects. One of the most significant wins and grant wins that we achieved this coming year in partnership with Sandag was funding for the San Diego Double Track Phase 2 project. Sandag and NCTD submitted a joint application to the state of California for these funds, with the goal being that this significant chunk of funding from the state would allow us to leverage future federal funds and make federal funding applications more competitive. Sandag also was successful in fully funding the Bataquitos Lagoon Double Track project. Both the San Diego Double Track and the Bataquitos Lagoon Double Track are critical state of good repair projects. San Diego Double Track project will replace a 107-year-old bridge. It's a critical state of good repair need for the district. Bataquitos Lagoon Double Track is the Bataquitos Lagoon Bridge is approximately 80 years old. So also these two double tracking projects were identified in several planning studies to be able to unlock future frequency increases for both NCTD, Coaster, Amtrak, Pacific Surfliner, and BNSF freight services. We also advanced our zero emission bus transition by receiving a 29 million FTA grant to fund 23 hydrogen buses, along with workforce development improvements that we're happy to partner with Palomar College on. We also received community project funding from Congressman Levin for $7 million to advance Sprinter signal modernization. And we also are able to advance several key planning studies that will pave the way for future capital funding applications. Highlighted here are some key federal and state funding opportunities. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as we all know, authorized historic levels of funding in the billions for rail and transit projects. New this year was the California state budget approved a significant amount of funding for transit throughout the state, 5.1 billion in formula funding. So that's a key indication. The next slide will detail NCTD's portion of that, but this is formula funding. So it's dedicated to come to us. We have to put forth an application that indicates how we're going to spend the funds. We don't have to compete with other agencies to receive this chunk. We've talked to you all about this till we're blue in the face, so I won't go too much on this, but NCTD is slated to receive 113 million through Sandag from the state, from the formula funds that we just mentioned. We're working on finalizing that package and should have it submitted by the end of the year. Some specific programs that are authorized at the federal and state level, I won't name them all, but Chrissy Ray's, these are critical for our rail and our bus projects. The state TRCP program provides a significant amount of funding throughout the state every year. The key for the TRCP program is that projects will increase ridership and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. So the priority projects that we are asking the board to authorize us to prioritize for this coming year would be to fully fund the San Diego Double Track project, leverage the 100 million that we already have received from the state. We would like to advance the Sprinter Corridor Service Improvement Project, Eastbrook to Shell Double Track Project, Sereno to Miramar Double Track Project, and the Del Mar Bluff Stabilization Project. The San Diego Double Track Project, we are all familiar. We have a pending application for the MEGA program for 130 million. In the event that we are unsuccessful with that, we'll need to seek additional funds from the federal government. Next slide, please. The Sprinter Corridor Service Improvement Project, as we all know, we will complete signal modernization of the entire corridor. Once that is complete, then we're going to be able to double track 9.5 miles of the corridor, which will allow us to double Sprinter frequencies, go from 13 minutes to 15 minutes. As we've said, this will be a critical ridership driver. It'll be the difference between somebody having to know the schedule of the Sprinter and not know the schedule, just being able to show up at the platform and be able to have a train coming in the next 15 minutes at the maximum. Next slide, please. The Eastbrook to Shell Double Track Project. This is has been moved up from the calendar year 2023 discretionary grant strategy to the calendar year 2024 discretionary grant strategy. This coming year, in this past year, the bridge, the San Luis Rey Bridge in Oceanside, has a slow order on it for freight trains. Coaster trains actually do not operate passenger service on this bridge. However, it's NCTD's responsibility to maintain a state of good repair of this bridge, and having a slow order on the bridge for freight trains is not great. So we're working with Sandag to fund this project. Slide. The Sereno to Miramar Phase 2 project is in the Sorrento Valley area. It would include 1.9 miles of double track, and it would also have some slope stabilization improvements. Right now, trains passing through this area have to slow down significantly, and so this project would allow them to maintain their speed and would improve on-time performance and the reliability of the service. And the Delmar Bluff Stabilization Project, we've been successful in partnership with Sandag in receiving funding for up to for so far 5 phases of the Delmar Bluff Stabilization Project in order to achieve full stabilization of this corridor until the region can identify a long-term solution. We do need some additional stabilization improvements, so we're working to get those funded. And then other priority projects for advancement, these are either not shovel ready or they need a little bit more planning before we can seek capital funds for these. The Camp Pendleton to San Onofre double track project is on the just south of the Orange County border. It'll be critical for the Southern California region to double track in this area in order to increase Amtrak and Metrolink services to service the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. So that's a critical project for the Southern California region. The Breeze Speed and Reliability Study recently completed, nearing completion, will identify measures to improve the speed and reliability of the Breeze service, including transit signal priority, some other BRT measures, and these we will need partnerships with the city to advance. Most of the improvements that are identified in this Breeze Speed and Reliability Study are roadway and signal improvements that NCTD does not have jurisdiction over. There are several, oh, sorry. You can go ahead. Yeah, why don't you just click through them? So the upcoming, oh, sorry, can you go back one more?
Real great.
This is the last slide, I promise. The most pressing and upcoming grant programs that we'll be seeking funding for, the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, the RAISE program is out now. The NOFO closes in February. The Railroad Crossing Elimination Program is also going to be critical for those grade separation projects. Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements. The CRISI program is critical for our coaster and LoSAN improvements. Lower no emission vehicles is to advance our zero emission bus transition. And as I mentioned, the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program at the state level can fund a vast number of transit programs. The Trade Corridor Enhancement Program and the Solutions for Congested Corridors programs, NCTD is not an eligible applicant, so we would need to partner with with Sandag or Caltrans on those applications, which the call for projects for those we expect to come out in the summer. Next slide. And with that, staff recommends that the Board of Directors approve and authorize staff to implement the proposed calendar year 2024 discretionary grant strategy, and we will be available for any questions.
Thank you for that excellent presentation. Kudos to Chris and Mary and staff. $250 million, nothing to sneeze at. Good job. Love it. Very impressive. And Mary, thank you for talking so fast.
I know. My words got caught in my throat.
I think somebody else wants to get out of here today. So, are there any public communications on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Board members, do you have any questions? Okay, Board Member Jenkins.
2 comments. I just want to make sure I understand on page 7. We're still hovering around $1 billion of money needs.
Yeah, so our estimated fiscal year 2025 capital need is, I think, about 1.5 billion of just NCTD's capital needs of projects that we can implement ourselves is, I think, over 300 million.
Okay.
I'll just add to that. One thing I think the board needs to be very conscious of is that costs on these projects are rising significantly and quickly. We're already seeing it on active projects. So just be aware, the longer we wait to do some of these projects, the more expensive they become.
And then my other more comment, and I don't know if everybody agrees if this is needed or not, but we get these drips throughout the year that we've got this much money, received this much in grants and all that. And I had no idea it was all of that throughout the year. It was $250 million. I'm wondering if there's some way that would be useful just so that we're up to date on what we receive throughout the year, maybe quarterly, but maybe like, I don't know what that would look like. I'm thinking visually like a spreadsheet that says we have this much we requested, we have this much we received. Just so, because the number, it's pretty significant what you're able to obtain, and maybe seeing it all in one simple format of some kind might be useful to be able to say we've received X amount of million.
Yeah, we could easily add that to the monthly intergovernmental affairs report in a easy table, visual table, so you could see it. Happy to do that.
I don't know
I
if
assume you don't
anybody
want to
else
see
is
the
interested
thermometer
in
that's
that or
on
not.
Harry's whiteboard, but
Yeah,
you don't want,
Yeah.
that's not good. No, we can absolutely include, I think, to your point, I think we could easily include pending grant applications,
Yeah.
grants received, that sort of information for you.
Because there's a lot of work that goes into it. Okay, thanks.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, actually. And back in the day, when I was first on NCTD, we used to get these little cards that told us, they were like elevator speeches for us, right? That talked about the projects and programs that we had needs for and the dollars that were needed to make those things happen. And I know I was on the League of Cities during that time, and I always really appreciated, and Sandag and, wherever else, but I appreciated having that at my fingertips to be able to say, hey, when somebody's talking about something, I sounded educated, first of all, I was like instantly little flashcards, but very helpful to have the information. So
Yeah, I don't know, it needs to be flashcards, but.
I missed the
Something.
flashcards. All right.
Flashcards that I need to get back.
I know you do have my I've already been pushing the flashcard too, so.
Okay, that worked.
Board Member Contreras.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Board Member Jenkins, I really like your suggestion. It almost sounds, I think it's twofold. One, the board, for us to, just always be up to speed with what's going on. But for the public, I think it's really important for them to see what NCTD is doing. And so, whether usually a table for the public facing side is not as, invigorating. But, maybe some kind of a dashboard that can also, I'm just thinking, even through MISBTA, some of the stuff that we go through with the service and marketing and stuff like that. I think that we can lean into all these millions of dollars that you all have been able to bring to this agency, to bring to fruition these really important connections to our community at large. Some kind of a public facing dashboard that really just shows in line with, a thermometer, whatever it might be. I think that's really exciting, and it's a way for us to display what we're doing. I wanted to ask a few questions regarding the unfunded need. The Sprinter Corridor Service Improvement Project, we're at 562 million. Is there any overlap between that need and then the grade separation 6 million, or is that 6 million for grade separations not on the Sprinter Corridor, but on the low sand side?
So the grade separation 6 million is not included in this 562 million. One of the grade separations that we identified is in the Buena Creek area. We determined that if we grade separated that area, that it would actually become feasible to do double tracking. So if we grade separated, very well could increase the $562 million number. Just a possibility. We haven't done any preliminary engineering or anything on that, but we determined that one of the constraints to double tracking through that area was environmentally sensitive area. So if we grade separated, then we potentially could add additional double tracking.
Okay, because of the creek itself. Okay. So I just want to make sure I have this straight. For all grade separations on the Sprinter line that we are looking at, including Buena Creek, including the $254,000 that the city of Vista received from Congressman Mike Levin for the Vista Transit Center grade separation, those needs are represented in the bucket named Sprinter Corridor Service Improvement Project.
I apologize if that's confusing. I realize that you're saying. So no, the Sprinter Corridor Service Improvement Project is just the signal modernization and the double tracking aspects.
Okay.
The $6 million for the grade separations is for the planning of the Buena Creek grade separation and additional planning that we could help the city of Vista, the VTC grade separation. we don't assume that the grade separation on the Sprinter corridor will cost only $6 million. It'll probably be
Right.
significantly more than that, but
That'd be
um,
significant deflation. So.
right. The immediate need for grade separations for the planning of these
Got it.
potential projects is about $6 million.
Okay. And do we anticipate, I mean, right now we are in this historic amount of funding for things like this huge infrastructure that's hundreds of millions of dollars. Do we think that we're on track to be able to have planning done for the grade separations on the Sprinter corridor and then be able to advance a competitive application for additional grant funding?
So we certainly don't want to rush through any of the planning. And as we all know, the funding situation is always fluid at both the federal and state levels. So the answer is it's unclear.
Okay. Okay, because our timeline is to 2026, right? Or what is the timeline for us for this historic amount of money?
Oh, for the.
So, right, it's funded through the authorization, and the authorized appropriations is through FY 2026, yes.
Okay.
But the Sprinter corridor project isn't, it's still in the early stages, so it's not shovel ready. So many of the money that are available now does not compete well in those.
Right.
You know, so-
That's why I'm trying, I just want to make sure that, you know, on the 78 corridor, when we look at our different modes of transportation, the Breeze and the Sprinter are the top two, right? Breeze being number one, Sprinter being number two. I just want to ensure that the Sprinter corridor can get to shovel-ready positioning so that by the time this historic amount of money is bye-bye, we already have our application in there. So whatever I need to do on my side of the city, I want to get that separated Vista Transit Center because it is critical if we're going to make our service every 15 minutes with the signal modernization, double tracking. That is an emergency response area that's going to be severely impacted by down gates. And that includes also in the city of Escondido at Nordal, where they have Palomar. So those two areas, I think, really need to have a priority on getting money for the grade separation, because we know it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, with LoSAN being part of the StracNet, is there any priority funding that the federal government provides for this network of strategically critical corridors?
So that point is one that we make in all of the applications, and it's a strong point for the federal applications. So yes.
So, okay. Because if not, I was going to say, like, do we need to put that in our legislative platform, or if it's not represented there? I know there were some additions that we were looking at adding to the legislative platform, but I mean, we should have priority funding for LoSAN on that, especially when we're looking at Camp Pendleton to San Onofre double track. I mean, it's like the federal government needs to move in a quick fashion to help us with that. But that's all from me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comments or questions? Board Member Jenkins, am I seeing you up again? No, you leaned forward. I thought there was something there. All right. Okay, well, let's see. Do I have a motion to approve other business item 20?
So moved.
Second Contreras.
Motion by Bob Patel, second by Contreras. Please call the vote.
Vice Chair Bob Patel. Aye. Board Alternate Gasterland.
Aye.
Board Member Hensy.
Yes.
Board Member Garcia.
Aye.
Board Member Robinson.
Yes.
Board Member Desmond.
Yes.
Board Member Jenkins.
Aye.
Board Chair Edson.
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
On the motion of Vice Chair Bob Patel, seconded by Board Member Contreras to approve NCTD's proposed calendar year 2024 discretionary grant strategy, motion passes.
Thank you. This brings us to the Executive Director's report. Before Mr. Ballard begins, I believe that our Vice Chair Bob Patel needs to leave. She has a commitment. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Well,
Okay,
thank you, Madam Chair.
Ballard.
I would like to begin my very brief report today by commending our presenters today. I hope it was apparent to the members of the board that we've really been working on sharpening and focusing our presentations, fewer slides, We're not reading the slides to you. We really worked very, very hard to, and I'm so pleased with the way it went. And it generated exactly what we wanted, and that is good policy discussion and feedback from you to us. So I'm very proud of the team. Chris Orlando, Karen Tucholsky, Katie Parsons, Nick Sofel, and Mary Dover. And that's why, and poor Mary, I mean, she was going awfully fast. She had a lot of stuff to cover, but each of them met their time element that we had established. And so I'm very proud of them. And Sean, you got a great crew that you're getting here. So in any event, we're going to continue to make sure that our presentations are sharp and focused and to the point. We've over the last month, since we were last together, we've continued to manage the district's business professionally and efficiently. We've continued to move forward on filling some of the senior positions. We interviewed several candidates for the chief operating officer for rail this week. We believe we have a candidate or two in there that could work. We're going to move in January with the rail chief mechanical officer. We're moving on the procurement director and then our HR department, all of which, you know, have some holes at the top, and those are our priority. And I do want to say that each of these we will be working with Sean and making sure that he's plugged in, because these are positions that will report to him. So he'll be an integral part of what we're doing and making sure that he's plugged in. I want to congratulate Sean on being selected, and I want to congratulate the board on selecting Sean. This is a fantastic match. I've known Sean for a long time, and I stand behind him. He will do a superb job for you, and I'm very proud to say that. And the board worked very, very hard. The committee, executive committee, worked very hard, put in long hours. The board, and you all took this so seriously, and you've come up with absolutely the best choice. So I was honored to be a part of that. And with that, I will say happy holidays to all, and we'll see you in January.
Thank you for that. This brings us to board member tiny brief reports. Does anyone have anything tiny and brief to report? No? Awesome. Okay. Suhel, do we have any remaining public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
At this time, public registration to speak on public communications will end. Before we adjourn, I want to take a moment to honor Anthony Casillas, an NCTD track maintainer who recently passed away. Anthony was not with the district long. He only joined NCTD in September, but I'm told that he made an immediate positive impact on his department and on his team. It was widely reported that Anthony was a wonderful young man, full of life and ambition, and had a great sense of humor. I understand that he'll be greatly missed. So I'd like to adjourn this final meeting of 2023 in honor of Anthony Casillas. And on a lighter note, I wish you all a holiday season that's merry and bright, and a very, very happy new year. This meeting's adjourned.